event. Wanted to thank you for including human trafficking in your discussion of pro-life, both because there are overlaps in the industries of human trafficking and also abortion, but also because critics of the pro-life movement say that you don't deserve to have that label, pro-life, that you should call yourself anti-abortionists because you are inconsistent in your evaluation of life. So the critics would say that you don't value all life, that maybe you have some obsession with women's bodies and it stems from some sort of an ism. It's important to know your critics' critiques, right? And so I want you to remember this moment when and if anyone ever says this to you, because you will remember coming to pro-life retreats and hearing about other lives that are under siege, and that we value that as well. Anytime, well, as Christians, we know that every human is made in the image of God. And so as image bearers, we all deserve the right to life. So whenever life is under siege, it's important for us to speak up, especially for people who do not have the ability to speak for themselves, as in the case of the preborn, and in the case of people who are trafficked. So what is human trafficking? Why am I speaking of it, on it? Who am I? So in short, one word, human trafficking is slavery. Again, my name is Grace Westbrook, and why I'm speaking on this is that for about 10 years, when I lived in Oregon, I was on the Oregon Human Trafficking Task Force. And so I spoke to community members all around Oregon about what human trafficking is, what it looks like in the United States and globally too, but mostly kind of how it operates here, what the legal definition of human trafficking is here in the US. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. It's a very big topic, so I'm going to condense it very small. And then when I'm done, Ms. Liz Mooney is going to talk about the overlap between these industries. So, and why do we call it industry? Because it's a commercial endeavor, both of these. Both of these are money-making businesses. Specifically, when it comes to human trafficking, the enslavement of other people is extremely lucrative. So it is a in the hundreds of billions of dollars, multi-billion-dollar industry globally. Something that people are usually surprised to hear is that slavery has never ended. We all kind of think, well, didn't that end? Well, it became illegal, but it never ended. It changed forms, it went underground, it operates differently in a world that operates differently than it did hundreds of years ago. So this is going to be hard to wrap your brain around, but try. There are more than double the number of slaves right now alive today than were trafficked in 400 years through the transatlantic slave trade. I'm going to say that again. More than double the number of slaves alive today in the world right now than were trafficked in the transatlantic slave trade in 400 years. So why and how is that possible? Are we uniquely evil today than we were hundreds of years ago? The answer, I believe, is no. I think humans are just as greedy, have a tendency for greed as they ever have, but we have a different world. We have communications different now. It's easier. Literal traffic is quicker, so it's easier and faster to traffic humans from one place to another. Communication is faster. So many more methods of communicating. And so all of this leads to opportunity for perpetrators to take advantage of. So being aware of what slavery looks like today is extremely important. If you have a voice, you can use it. If you have freedom, you can use it. And what better way to do so than to use it on behalf of people who cannot speak for themselves. So, wanted to say, oh, I'm getting a phone call. Hang on. Hello? Just kidding. Okay. Just a little weird personality moment. All right. So, let's see. So let's define human trafficking, and I'll tell you about the types and then briefly give you snapshots of what those types might look like today. So to define it, human trafficking legally would be defined in so many bigger words by saying that it has to do with the recruitment, the control, or the use of human beings' bodies or services, and of course for commercial profit. So there's always that piece of money-making endeavor. Sometimes it doesn't actually have to be money. It could be the exchange of goods or services in exchange for the exploitation of somebody's labor or sexual service. So it also, usually the means by which this happens is through what they call force, fraud, or coercion, which basically means violence, lies, or emotional manipulation. And this can kind of be a theme actually through all kinds of human trafficking, labor, or sexual trafficking. So how people end up being trafficked is sort of these commonalities. So what makes somebody vulnerable? First of all, anybody can be trafficked. Anyone can become enslaved. Perpetrators, or criminals, they go for low-hanging fruit. So they're not going to enslave someone who's difficult to enslave. They usually go for somebody who's vulnerable. It's easier to enslave. So what makes somebody vulnerable to being a modern-day slave? Poverty. Economic need is a big one. Natural disasters, political instability, these things create poverty very quickly overnight and can lead to being just without a home overnight, without a community overnight. Criminals might come into those situations and take advantage of the fact that people have needs, offer them fraudulent job opportunities. I'm going to give you a couple of stories that really just give you an example of how that might operate. And then also in the area of sex trafficking as well. So, and then also having a history of abuse or neglect. So having a felt need, having an emotional felt need that a perpetrator can use as an emotional connection with you to manipulate and to get you into a circumstance in which you find yourself powerless. Then there's also the unmonitored online activity, and this is actually an increasingly growing danger in our increasingly growing technology society, how criminals and perpetrators are using the online platforms to enslave and coerce and exploit, especially minors. When I say minor, it's people not yet 18 years old. So in terms of labor trafficking and sex trafficking, you have to, in a court of law, to prosecute a perpetrator, you have to prove that there was force, violence, lies, or emotional manipulation to get somebody to be exploited financially. Not in the case of sexual exploitation of minors. If a child at all, less than 18 years old, is being exploited sexually, and there is any kind of goods and services or monetary gain happening for anybody along that path, whether you just gave that person a ride from one location to another, whether you own the hotel in which this is taking place in knowingly, you know it's taking place, all of the people along that line can go to prison for a minimum of 10 years if a child is being sexually exploited. So just be aware that this is not the same. You do not have to prove force, fraud, or coercion when it comes to the sex trafficking of a minor. So I'll give you an example from recent news. 13 days ago, an article came out in the Associated Press that said there were 7,000 individuals. This is one of the largest compound raids or recovery of survivors of trafficking in history that I know of. I mean, it's real close if it's not. 7,000 people at one time were discovered in a compound in Myanmar last month, and they just came out 13 days ago with this article, to be enslaved as scam callers. So I'm going to tell you the story of Rudo. He's from Zambia. He is an educated man. This is a true story, and he just told his story. He was looking for work. He knows how to speak English. He can type. He has skills. He couldn't find work in Zambia. So he sees on Facebook an advertisement that for a job that looks too good to be true. I mean, it's really well paying. They're hiring. He goes in. He has interviews, multiple. They confirm, yes, he knows how to speak English. Yes, he can type, etc. They hire him. This is fraudulent, of course. This is the lie. technique. It's so much easier to traffic somebody from one location to another if they are a willing party. Okay, so this is a large technique across not just labor, but also sex trafficking. If you can convince your victim to follow me, come over here, you don't have to actually smuggle anybody anywhere. They come willingly. So you help them get their passport. Rudo came from Zambia to Myanmar. He thought he was getting this great job. He gets in a bus full of people from all around the world. By the way, they discovered these 7,000 people came from all around the world to get these fake jobs. Well, it's a real job, they're just not getting paid. And so eventually they're in this bus for hours and hours. They're getting into more and more rural area. They start asking questions. Nobody's answering them. Where are we going? What's happening? So he's in a foreign land. He's being taken to an unknown location, to a compound where there's men with guns. They take all of their documents. This is a very common theme. Documents get taken. You're in a foreign land, you don't have your passport, you don't have your ID, how are you gonna run? There's people with guns. These people were forced to scam call. When you get a call, scam likely, it's kind of funny for us. Sometimes we're like, oh, that's so funny. Hey, my boyfriend scam likely is calling. We make a joke out of it, but the truth is that we've discovered now this is a massive problem that UN estimates 120,000 people are being forced to scam call with brutality, being forced to work for 21 hours a day. And if they don't produce these impossible quotas of scamming people out of their life savings, they are brutalized and tortured and electrocuted and awful things. So this is the conundrum of modern day society, where we have so much technology accessible to people to scam and perpetrate awful human rights violations. All right, so there's one example of labor trafficking. There's many types of labor trafficking, many industries that are affected, but we're gonna move on to sex trafficking because we are limited time. But I'm gonna give you one more example actually. Of 9 days ago, an article came out of another example of a certain kind of labor trafficking. So domestic labor, when someone works inside of a home and lives inside of the home, it can make them very vulnerable, especially if you travel across, and you should just be aware of this. If you see jobs on Facebook that look too good to be true, they probably are. Or you probably don't use Facebook, that's like an old person reference. Okay, let's see, some other venue you think is cool. Anyway, if you see job opportunities that are too good to be true, they are probably, so look into it very deeply before, especially traveling internationally. Another thing is sometimes there are these au pair, they call it, or nanny work in other countries that can make you very vulnerable as well. So here's an example. 9 days ago, an article came out. A woman, these often happen with diplomats because they go to a new country, they want a domestic servant in their home, servant, they can pay him fairly, but this woman, and often we find with domestic servitude, it becomes slavery, essentially, like exploitation. So her name was Lydia Mugambi from Uganda. She was living in the United Kingdom. She was just convicted of slavery in the United Kingdom for trafficking her domestic servant, exploiting and abusing her. And this woman was a judge for the United Nations. She was a research fellow for a time at Columbia University in the Human Rights Department. So really, you just don't know at any given time, how our modern day is actually operating until you get a little peek into it sometimes and you see underlying, the human heart can be greed, every one of us, right? We all know we are not above greed, but the way that it plays out in the world is pretty shocking sometimes. So let's talk about sex trafficking as we move into how these industries overlap. So sex trafficking might happen in a variety of ways, actually. Everything from pimp-controlled prostitution to online exploitation of minors to, another example that I will give you shortly here, which is along the lines of an online exploitation of a minor. So I'm going to tell you about this woman named Mary. She was a young teenager actually and just lacked attention from her parents. her parents were busy working, her mom was depressed, stuff like that. She just didn't have, she had some felt needs, right? She got an invitation from a friend. By the way, the majority of people who are trafficked are introduced either to their trafficker or their trafficker is a friend or a family member. And so between half and 90%, you'll see different statistics, but the majority of people who are trafficked either are introduced to the trafficker by a friend or a family member, or their trafficker is a friend or family member. So that's shocking alone, right? Because you think of like, oh, stranger danger, and like, don't follow the job that looks too good to be true, but it could be a friend who's like, hey, you should see this or check this out, or, maybe innocently, hey, here's a link to a job, or whatever it is. And so you feel like there's this automatic trust. So Mary had a friend who said, you could do is make some money on the side. I do this. And you could do these online phone calls, sexual encounters, and make a lot of money and get stuff and all this. So she's kind of bored. She's like, sure, okay. She does this. She does this for a while. Her parents find out. They get extremely angry at her. They take her phone away. She's kind of in this state of already lacking, right? And then having already been exposed to this type of work and had made a friend in this work, a young man. He's young 20s. He always was just so good at listening. He was always so good at just hearing anything she had to say. He never asked her to do anything inappropriate, never asked for pictures, nothing. So he felt trusted. When her crisis came, she went to him. She got a burner phone from her friend, went to him, talked about it, ran off, lived with him, ran away. Turns out he's not her boyfriend. He's got lots of girls, and she finds herself in a situation where she is forced to physically prostitute herself multiple times a day, 12 to 15 men, or face the consequences of brutality, physical violence. And the coercion of emotional manipulation of, I know where your parents live, I know where your family lives, I will kill them. And she believes him because he is brutal. So this is pimp-controlled prostitution, and this is one way of sex trafficking of minors, but also just girls, women, and younger men as well, boys. So let me tell you another way that the minors are trafficked. And you should especially be aware of this because every single one of you are at risk if you have a phone in your pocket, okay? So like I said, in our modern world, it's like, are we uniquely evil? No, but we have unique tools, and people can be manipulative. One thing I think as teenagers, it's hard to believe that you could be manipulated by an adult because your brain is really close to adult. You're pretty much, you're starting to think abstractly. It's like, I'm on to you people, right? And you kind of are, but you should know that adults can easily manipulate you. So your online friend, who might be actually 10 years older than you, but you don't know that, or maybe 25, 30 years older and you don't know that, you need to really, really think about the fact that you can't make friends online. You can have friends that end up going online, but you don't make your friends online. Just be aware. So Walker, 16-year-old boy, true story, in Mississippi, loves his family, they love him, they pray together every night, they have dinner at the table every night. He has a brother younger than him. He's on the football team, he just got his driver's license, super excited about life, okay? He doesn't know that this is a pretty dangerous tool. He doesn't know that it could endanger his life that very night. His parents don't know that either. They don't know that having Instagram on his phone is going to be deadly for him in the next 24 hours. They don't know that having his phone in his bedroom all night is going to be deadly for him by morning. So he is on his phone on Instagram, he gets a DM from someone, super friendly person, they start talking, chatting. 2 hours later, they know a lot about each other. He also doesn't know. You're not supposed to give out your personal information to people online, strangers, okay? They're not your friends. So, yeah, I go to school here, I'm this age, yeah, here's my family info, basics. So then he gets this invitation by this person to have a sexual encounter online. by link. So he follows this link. He is a normal 16-year-old boy, healthy sex drive. So, you know, he makes a bad choice and he follows this link. And what he doesn't know is clicking on that link enables his device to record him. And so he is being recorded during the sexual encounter. Afterwards, this perpetrator sends him still shots and video footage of him and says, give me X amount of dollars or this goes out to all of your contacts on Instagram. So he's panicking, of course, thinking my life is over. Oh my goodness, I don't have this money. Steal it from your parents. I can't do that. They don't have it. I don't want to do that. Well, I guess we'll just send it out to all of your contacts. So this you know, begging goes on for hours. By morning, Walker, you know, he says, I guess I should just kill myself. Yeah, you should just kill yourself. Your life is over. Anyway, Walker kills himself that night, totally happy, not depressed, has a good life. His family loves him, vice versa. He was human trafficked, sexually exploited. By the way, his content is permanently online for perpetrators and predators and pedophiles. So yeah, he's dead because by morning he killed himself. So we are dead serious, you know. People don't realize the powerful tool in their hand, and that it's not just a powerful tool for themselves, but for people who have bad intent. And there's so many other stories about students or children who, you know, they think they have a friend online and they physically end up meeting up with that person and become enslaved through those types of emotional manipulations. I know where your family lives, I will kill them. You would be surprised what you would do to preserve people you love. So they get themselves into these situations. Some red flags to keep an eye on, okay, for yourselves as teenagers. If you have a friend online these are red flags, who rush to move your communication off the platform that you're on. So, hey, let's go to this other place and chat. Like, hey, text me personal from your phone or whatever instead of using this platform. That's a red flag. A request to private information too quickly, I would say ever. I mean, come on, you don't really know them. Job offers that look too good to be true, obviously, and also the pressure to keep the relationship silent or secret, that's a red flag. So those are just things to keep in mind as teenagers that you can kind of keep your eye on. Let me think if there is something I've missed here before I bring Miss Liz up here to talk about how these industries overlap. Yeah, I think I have said all that I wanted to really touch on here. So